Okay, let's admit a few more other people and welcome to this edition of Meeting of Membership Minds. It's a special one. We've invited a guest in to talk a little bit to us about membership recruitment, and that's Tony Rosell, who authored this book that I'm almost through, Tony, almost through. But it just came out, right? Tony, when was it published?
We started, I got it uploaded and things, and basically February is when we got it launched.
That is so quick. I tell you, that was quick turnaround on your part. But, you know, just for you and everyone else that's involved here, again, we're recording this, but it's just a session that's been very informal. Scott Ozer and I kind of have been fostering this. We started it before 2020, but then 2020 came where we're like, we got to do a lot more of this. And so we started doing it almost, I guess it was every other week or so, just to make sure we have some place where membership professionals can go to really talk about what's going on with membership programs, membership development, recruitment, retention. And I call it the support group for membership professionals in a lot of ways, because a lot of things happen, and we're here to help and support and have your back to help try to find some solutions. So, thanks for everyone participating. We do have a few more that just joined in here. And today, maybe Tony, you can kind of kick us off and tell us a little bit about your book and kind of how it got there. You know, you ended up writing the book on membership recruitment. So let's let's hear from you.
I'm happy to do that, and then we can just have a conversation.
Sure.
Well, I've got to give Dan credit, because I was reflecting on this, Dan, and I'm pretty sure it was the summer of 2018. You and I had lunch together, and we went to the Royal Restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember walking out of my building and you saying to me, you know, Tony, you write so much, you should write a book. And I said, interesting idea. So
yeah.
So
Absolutely.
you are part of the inspiration for putting that together. But, you know, the real thought behind it was this. I've been able to work with membership groups for about 3 decades now, and I know many of you and worked with many of you. And I've had a lot of experiences, and I've read a lot and experienced a lot. So I wanted to get that down on paper and start writing. So I set some time aside, started writing, and it came together. And really what it is, it's a culmination of my experiences. I bring in a lot of our benchmarking data, because for 12 years now, 13, we've done a benchmarking study and had thousands of associations tell us their information. And then I've read a lot. I've read Sarah Sladek's material, and Mark Levin, and Sherry Jacobs, and lots of other marketers. So I tried to bring all that together in one place, and a fairly, hopefully, concise and helpful book. And the thing that, you know, the inspiration really is, I've worked with wonderful associations. I believe in the mission that associations are doing. And anything I've learned, I want to be able to pass on and share. And let me give you a quick example, and then we can just open up for more discussion. But, you know, I was really inspired just this last year, because one of the groups I've worked with for the last decade is the American Nurses Association, and we've basically doubled their membership. But this year was particularly challenging for them. And we've had really good success in getting more members, but we've seen things that take place, like they've been doing a series of webinars on how to deal with COVID and how to help nurses protect themselves and keep their patients alive. They're getting 190,000 registrations for that from 100 countries around the world. And when you things like, you see the power of membership, you see the difference that our associations are making in people's lives, and to be able to share information on how to do that better was really the inspiration for me.
Yeah, and thanks, Tony. And that's, you know, I was reading about that in the book, and you know, the ANA and the organization I'm with, FMI, the Food Industry Association, I'm sure they're burgeoning. You know, they both are really seeing positive growth due to the pandemic, you know, as a result of the pandemic, where there's a lot of other associations that are seeing the opposite. And we have discussed that in this group a few times. And one thing I wanted to kind of mention and maybe kind of kick off the discussion here was, you have always been a great proponent of direct mail and having that at the core of any membership marketing activities or program. And one of the struggles or challenges that we've had is, people going from the office to home and working remotely all over the place. And so how do you do a direct mail campaign when addresses are really not available or not really captured in your database or anywhere for that matter?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm curious if anyone is having any success with direct mail right now that they can share about. We are seeing a diminishment in the effectiveness of direct mail because of the exact thing you said, Dan. When people are not in the office, you're sending mail sometimes, especially for renewal notices, which has been really a challenge for people. You're sending mail to empty offices. A couple workarounds that we found for that is there are many associations that do have home addresses available. So the group you used to work for, Dan, that you and I worked together for years, ASCD, many of the teachers used a home address, and you can access and rent home address records from different databases. So I think going to home addresses, nurses, the same thing, it works. The other thing people are doing, especially on renewals, is they're doing home address appends. And so we're finding about a 95% accuracy rate on appending home addresses to people's database, and then sending out renewal notices to those home addresses. And that's been a really helpful way to help sustain renewals for a lot of associations.
Yeah, 95% seems impressive to try to just find a name and someone that's close to for us, it's a trade association. So that's even more of a challenge because, everyone is based at the one location until they're not. And then how do you get that information to them? Is there anyone else in the group that's had this challenge or found some solutions? Any advice? Feel free to unmute and just speak or chat.
Well, like a lot of us, we headed into this and we had one, we pretty much had a primary address field. We didn't know if it was work or home. So if a trade association, if it was an associate member and they were in sales, it was likely their home. So what we did is magazines pretty popular. And we also offered a different time is we wanted to send them a small pick-me-up gift. So we sent an email and a social media campaign that basically said, would you like to get your magazine delivered at home? And you just clicked the button and gave us your home address. And then we also did where we sent out hand sanitizer in the beginning when it was hard to come by. We happened to had a stockpile from shows. And the hand sanitizer probably cost about $1 or 80 cents each when we bought them in quantity, but we spent $2.26 sending everybody one. But at least they felt loved with a little note, and we got home addresses that way.
Oh, very nice.
It didn't solve the problem, but it made a huge dent.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm guessing that in those cases also you could be using email to go ask for those addresses as well, because they do monitor their email even if they're not at the office address.
Yeah, Dan, I think it's really interesting because it depends on industry. Kevin and I know Kevin's on here too, we just did a campaign and we didn't use home addresses. We used their office addresses because these are people that need to be in their offices. It's a healthcare situation where they had we just put away to their home addresses, and we don't have final results yet, but everything's going well compared to what we've seen in the past. So it's everybody's situation is unique, but I do like Tony's append idea because I know there are lots of industries where people just simply aren't in the office, so you got to get them somewhere.
And it's amazing what people know about you, Scott, right? I mean, there's whenever we check those little boxes on those, yes, I accept the agreement. It's amazing what information we're sharing with the big database in the sky.
Dan, you're on mute.
Dan, you're on mute.
Oh, okay. So, no, does anyone else have any other suggestions or recommendations? Again, feel free to speak up, or, the chat is always available.
I did a campaign. We dropped it a little later than we usually do. We usually drop third week in January, and I held it back till about the third week in February, just figuring more people would be in office. And so we did a hybrid where we mailed office addresses that we had, but also the home addresses that we had in our database. Figuring we'll try to catch them one way or the other or both ways. And actually, right now we're halfway in the month of March, and this looks like it's going to be our strongest March ever. So I guess it's working.
Yeah, one thing I'm curious about to hear from folks is our sense is right now, and reason I think the timing for this book was good, is clearly for most associations, 2020 was a tough year for membership, and there's the exceptions, but our benchmarking data is coming in now, and it looks like only about 26% of associations are saying that their membership grew last year, which by far and away is the worst year in the last 13 years. Our sense is, and what we're seeing is recruitment opportunities are growing though this year. There's certainly going to be more money in the economy for many people. There's a need for community, there's a need for networking, there's a need for critical information. And so we're seeing numbers starting to pick up as far as recruitment goes. I'm just curious, are people planning on more aggressive recruitment in this year, or are you sort of just battening down the hatches and holding on, or what's the strategy for 2021 for different associations?
Tony, this is
I could tell you we also had a campaign last May where we really scaled it back just to houseless.
Yeah.
And so we did not rent anything. But I mailed in September using outside lists, mailed like I said in February, and we'll mail again May using outside lists. So at a year-over-year basis, yeah, we're going to be more aggressive this year than last year.
Yeah, this is Pete with AIUM. I kind of echo what Daryl was saying. We've been more aggressive in Q1, so we're already tracking a month ahead of where we were last year for new member recruitment. So far for us, new member recruitment is actually going really, really well.
Good.
This is Cheryl. I'm with the Propeller Club, and we sail, we don't fly, just for everyone's clarification. But we're international, and one of the things I'm finding internationally is that in Europe, most of the people, they only want to get together in person. They've been very reluctant to go on to these virtual webinars that we've had. And our membership is based on what our chapters do. They're the ones who go out and get members. So we're finding that this year, because of course last year everything was pivoted at the last minute. So we're doing much more intentional things. Again, our annual convention is virtual, and we're starting to put on webinars throughout the year for everyone. But it's been a process to get everyone to understand the value that they're getting out of membership during this time. Even though we're doing virtual things, it's just so different that getting them to realize that you're still receiving value from us. And that's been our big draw, and also trying to work on getting working with students and trying to get the younger population in, since they're the ones who are into the virtual and all these other things. So that's been our goal.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I will be interested to see, are we going to see things pick up? And even with virtual, one of the things we've seen with virtual meetings is the attendance in many cases has been better than face-to-face, which obviously feeds your database for other prospective members. One thing I'm curious about, and I'm happy to debate it, because I'm sure people maybe have different opinions. One of the premises of the book that I, and the main theme of the book actually, is that the key to growth is really establishing and building a recruitment program. And it's not to diminish engagement, it's not to diminish renewals, it's not to diminish value. But my experience and what I really try to communicate in the book is that having a successful and aggressive and functional recruitment program really is the driver for association membership growth. Is that a fair premise? Would you all agree with that, or is that a debatable issue in your minds?
Well, Tony, I always love a good debate with you. I used to do it weekly, but
For hours
in our meetings for hours. And yeah, I didn't always agree with Tony, but that was a great thing about it, is that we could talk through things and try to figure out what is the best next step. So, I agree with you, Tony. Surprisingly,
Well,
I
thank you.
agree with you on that. But we have, I like your, we always kind of use this analogy or metaphor as far as the bucket, and you always kind of have to have that flow of, water, members coming in the top of that funnel, even though, the bucket has holes in it where you can't retain all the water. You have to constantly have that flow coming in to keep any level in that bucket. So yeah, I completely see that and agree. And yeah, it's costly. And I think that's where a lot of the pushback comes around, is that why should we spend so much money when we have a strong membership now? And it's growing, organically 1 or 2%, each year. So, we're good. We're good. It's during these times like 2020 where I think a lot of those were slapped in the face with the fact that, oh, wow, we should have been doing this a little bit stronger, or at least had this built, the structure built for us to push. And, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier too, 2020 actually was a very good year for us, because people were coming to us with the need, that trade associations, I could see that. Certain industries were very challenged, but for the most part, if the message gets out there and the awareness is out there that this is where you come when you need help or when times do get tough, then the growth happens. So, kind of putting those together, I think, recruitment wise, it's almost like it's ripe for a great messaging out there to recruit.
Well,
Yeah.
and that leads to a point I was going to make, which is I've seen a lot of chatter about folks improving their DEI situation. And part of it is for the membership at whole, but also to get a better bench ready to serve on boards and committees. And as long as you've got a strong recruitment tool, you can tweak it to, modify your messaging, but you've got to have that in place.
Hey,
Good
Tony,
point.
from my perspective, and of course, I've worked with really large charities as well, and it's kind of fascinating because, nonprofits oftentimes on that side have very well developed recruitment or, donor acquisition programs, and they focus less attention on retention. And I think that what always struck me about working for associations and then becoming a consultant to them is that a lot of times there is that kind of matter where a belief tends to sort of impede this, where, recruitment can be expensive on a per unit basis or just to maintain. We get enough, like Dan was saying, we get enough flow of new members all the time. But I think there's a very different dynamic if you have a lot of people that you consciously ask to bring into the fold. There's a different, like, we invited you here, we're going to onboard you well, we're going to manage that. And it seems like so many associations have organic membership where, folks will still come in through referral networks and, by visiting the website and things like that. But I think to almost rephrase your question, is really, do you need to have an aggressive membership recruitment program or a passive one? And I think that a lot of times people don't actually appreciate how passive their programs are. Even Barbara's point about diversity is, well, if you don't, find people from underrepresented populations and then invite them to join systematically and repeatedly, well, then you can kind of be forgiven for not having diversity. And there's so many different ways where I think that the lack of having at least, say, a couple of campaigns a year, they can be modest in size. things like that. A charity would go out of business if they used our approach. And I know they're sort of apples and oranges, but it's always been very striking in terms of working with both sides, with associations and donor groups. Yeah.
Although I do want to bring up Jamie's point, which is if you don't have a good engagement program, why bother to bring them all in and then,
Yeah.
dump them at onboarding.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, you have to have the baseline things covered of engaging people and having value, or it doesn't work. Here's the interesting thing in benchmarking associations, again, for 13 years. One of the things we found to be incredibly stable is renewals. I mean, people's renewal rates maybe go up a point, down a point, up 2 points, down 2 points. But for the most part, renewal rates have been, in our estimation, pretty stable. And so if renewal rates are stable, and yet over the history, associations are growing their membership, the variable there is that recruitment piece. But yeah, Jamie's absolutely right. If you're not doing the basics, then going above and beyond that, it can be really challenging.
Yeah, Tony, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the benchmarking survey shows for 2020, because I've heard horror stories. I've heard some great stories, but I've heard horror stories of people that renewals are dropping like a rock. And I know it's an outlier, and we all know that this is going to be an outlier. 2020 is a huge outlier year that you can't really compare, but it doesn't mean it's going to bounce right back. That's the scary part, is there's no guarantee it's just going to be like, oops, 2020 happened, it's passed, all right, we're back to normal now, because we don't know. And so I think the data you guys are going to pull for this year, just as a point of comparison, is going to be really interesting. What we do with it is a whole different story, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see what really happened to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tony, this is a speculative question, but do you think that I was thinking about some listserv posts I've seen over the past couple of days where people say, hey, does anyone out there still use snail mail and stuff like this? And it almost seems like a lot of us have made these assumptions too of, well, you're probably not in the office, so I'm just going to email our invoices. The campaign that Scott was referring to just now, we have like 8 times the response rate on our reinstatement than we do for the acquisition part of it. And what that suggests to me is that, sometimes our own clients too are abandoning some things at work, or just are more passive than they used to be when it comes to managing their renewals, where they may drop, would be the bad news this year. Next year they'd be ripe for reinstatement. So yeah.
I think, Kevin, it's a great point. What I've been seeing are two or three things on renewals. My hope is they're going to come back. But what's happening is I think what happened initially, you had a lot of what I call panic lapses.
Yeah.
So just like people were selling their stocks and things and the market went down, it's like, oh, I don't have money, I could lose my job, I got to hold on to cash. So those people did not leave for value issues, they left for cash flow issues.
Yeah.
I think those people are, as they feel comfortable, are very likely to come back. The
So-
second category are the non-deliverable mail, and that is a challenge. I think as people get back to the office, that will help. One of the things I'm finding on the mail side though is phone still gets through. Everyone has their phone forwarded. So if you can't get people through the mail, the calling programs can be really effective. I do think that if I had a budget to spend for this next year for recruitment, I would spend the majority on it. If I had seen that precipitous drop in renewals, I'd spend the majority of my money in encouraging those lapsed people to come back. And I think that would be where I'd start. And I'd use everything from digital to email to phone. And I try mail as I can either find home addresses or get home addresses updated. So I think that's a good point.
So Tony, one of the things that's showing up in the chat quite a bit, so I kind of want to get to this, is that when we talk about panic, well, it's like the organizations and the leadership panic, and so they start throwing things out there. Like I see, last year we were talking about this time, we were talking about freezing renewals, and then there was also that we're just having these webinars that are free, and anyone that wants to sign up, or the pricing is all over the place. And Pete brings up a point that competitors are just offering free content, versus you know, what we used to charge for, and even some discussion here about free memberships in the chat. So, you know, how do you calm down some of these folks or some of these strategies that that they're throwing out that says this is what we're going to do to make sure, you know, we continue to grow. And I just want to mention to everyone, last time that we had this meeting, my internet went down and we got cut off. So I apologize. I'm hoping that doesn't happen again, but my entire internet within the house went down. So I'm hoping that everything just keeps going. We're going to go on for maybe probably about 10 minutes after the hour. So stay with us if you can.
Yeah, so there's a yin and a yang to your question, Dan, because I think one of the things that I've been impressed with, and we found this in the research we did in the fall, which was our economic outlook survey, the level of innovation and the barriers to change remarkably dropped this last year. So people were willing to experiment and try things. And I think that's a healthy thing for associations. I think that too often, there's been a paralysis of analysis, that people don't try new things and do new things because, you know, we didn't do it that way before, the bylaws or IT can't support it, or, you know, 100 different reasons. I think on the flip side of that, though, one of the things that is really important, and I could talk about in, I think, chapter 9 of the book, is the importance of tracking, measurement, and analysis. Because if you're doing webinars and they're for free, but you can track the attendees and go back to them and ask them to join, and you're finding a strong ROI of people who are exposed to your content and want more and want to join, then great. Then you should do that. So I do think that a lot of these free things are the opportunity to basically build your database. And the trick on that then is okay, now that I have these names in my database, can I engage these prospective members, show them additional value, and encourage them to join? And can I get some ROI? So there's certainly threats in this, but I do think that the level of innovation I'm seeing is inspiring. And the amount of change, the part of that equation though is tracking and analyzing and saying what of these innovations are creating new engagements, new members, and new opportunities. I don't know if anyone's found a way, if people found that as you've had people coming in for whatever resources, for your community, for your webinars, for whatever, has there been a conversion of those people to become members?
Andrea, you can unmute there and nudge, nudge.
I resist the urge to Zoom call as much as I can. No, and Tony, that's what's been so hard. And I don't know if it's the challenges I'm having in the database lists, and I can't, it's not instant. Like I'm looking for that instant, you attended, now I want to send you this entire drip campaign, and our systems are divergent right now, and that's a big problem for me. But I'm just not seeing it. And again, I'm at an association that's membership's not where we make money. So yeah, to some extent, there's kind of not a big push. But it is not bringing in, you know, when we're seeing an 800% increase in attendance at our events, I am not seeing that translate to membership.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So I don't think I've ever heard, and Andrea, I'm not sure, but I don't think I've ever heard that we're not making money at membership as something that the leadership has said. So if I ever heard that, I think my response to Tony smiling, I could see it. You know, the chuckle would be, hold it, who's buying all those other things? Who's registering?
Oh, no,
you know,
so,
you
Dan,
know,
this
is it different for, okay.
My second association where membership is such a small piece of the puzzle. And when you ask the question of who's buying our stuff, we can actually tell you our non-members buy more than our members do. So my fight has to be, but who is creating the stuff that we're selling? It's our members. So if we don't have them, then we've just become a commercial product provider. So it's finding that balance. But yeah, I'm at number 2, where membership is like an afterthought. So.
Well, it's good that you have that experience, you know, expertise going into it.
We're actually getting a lot of new members right now. more than some are way former expired members, but we're getting a lot of new members. And my concern is we're medical writers. And so people think, I like to write, I'll become a medical writer, and I want to work from home. And my concern is that in a year, we already had the issue. We call them Natalie newbies. And we've been focusing the last couple of years on qualified Natalies. And we've been doing a really good job. But in the last few months, 6 months, I can tell a lot of these people are just going to drop off after a year. So we either need to keep encouraging them throughout the year to really get them on the path. We've always had people who are like, oh gosh, that's a lot harder than I realized. Yes, it is. Just because you're a good writer doesn't mean you can be a medical writer. And so we've always had that drop off, but I feel like we're gonna feel it, next year for sure. And I don't know if we can really walk some of these people through so they truly can become good medical writers and mitigate that number a little bit, but I don't know. I think we're gonna feel it in a year is when we're gonna see a big drop off.
Yeah.
It's gonna hurt.
I feel like a lot of our growth, I would have to say in my organization, FMI, the Food Industry Association, the reason why we had such a record year, not really record year, but a much better year this year, the 2020 for recruitment, was because of the CEOs contacting our CEO and saying, we need your help. And she said, absolutely, I'll help. And those are the non-members, prospects, that basically she helped them and then said, okay, now, here's your, here's the application. You need to fill it out and join. And there's no doubt at that point. So I can't, have credit for the growth that we've had. It was really her.
Take the credit.
So, I maybe. So, but it's it's that need that really comes up. And then, then it's more about and we have to kind of prove the value beyond that, beyond the crisis,
By the way, I'm not a multitasker because I'm old. Like my adult children can do 5 things at once, but someone asked where you can get the book. I did see that. And it's on Amazon, but it's not like a top seller yet. So you've got to put the whole title in if you want to search for it. But it's
well,
yeah,
I did my part.
Yeah,
I did my part.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Tony, if I'm remembering the benchmarking questions correctly, I think there's some that dig into your value proposition and, where does your association stand with that? I would love if there could be a comparison between the ones who say, we don't really have one, or we haven't updated it in the last decade, and the ones who are reporting membership drop-offs. And some of it is industry influenced, yes.
It is. There's a lot of things. And Scott is always very helpful to me because he always reminds me that we're talking about correlation and not causation. And he's always very good about that. We actually this year are comparing those who feel they have a strong value proposition and their membership
great
performance. And just a little heads up that yes, there is a you can say not negative or positive correlation of strong value propositions are keeping people, and so that certainly is a driver. It's interesting because here's the interesting thing for recruitment. You're focusing on the perceived value. You're focusing on the sizzle. On retention, you're focusing on the received value. And
I like that.
And
nice.
And the received value in my mind has 3 elements. It's relevance, which is that critical information. It's community, connect people working and ability to really connect other. And the third is experience. What experience are we delivering to members to that's memorable, that's exciting, that's helpful. And so those are the received value that people are looking for. And so you have to think through, one of the things I share with people is, recruitment is like you're creating a dinner party and you make a beautiful meal. You have wine, you have appetizers, you have a main course, and you've cooked a fabulous meal. and you're ready to put it out, and then you realize you forgot to invite people to come to the dinner party. And so a lot of associations I find have that value. What they're lacking is those invitations to invite people to come in, and defining and building a messaging so that you're messaging that perceived value, because people can't experience it if they're not a member, but messaging that perceived value, and then delivering it. And again, this year's going to be tough on renewals, but renewals in our benchmarking for 13 years, renewals for individual groups have been 79, 80, 81%. We're looking at 1,000 associations on average. I mean, there's obviously some a lot higher, some a lot lower, but it's been pretty stable. So associations are delivering value to members as a whole. I think that packaging that value and incentivizing people to try it and come on board for a year is still holding back some groups.
So you get the dinner, then you bill them. Is that what it's kind of like a restaurant
you
thing?
You gotta get the smell. You gotta get the smell of the chocolate chip cookies out on the sidewalk to get people to come in and sample them.
Just hoping we don't have any that are dine and dashers, right? So
exactly.
Right. I mean, it worked for us, Tony, with the whole free trial and no obligation. It works really well for more of the individual membership organizations.
Well, Dan, you were part of an organization that grew from 12,000 members to 135,000 members, and you were the biggest advocate for membership. I'll never forget that you gave everyone on staff a little mirror, as I recall, and said, and said, who's responsible for membership? And it's everybody on board. And you were part of one of the biggest growth organizations in the professional association industry. So, and you had a passion for that and you drove that growth. So, keep that in mind.
Well, the passion's still there and it's just at different organizations, but I'm, to me, it's just, to use one of your favorite words, fascinating, to, constantly going through, each and every organizations I've worked with. It's just the subtleties and nuances of how you go about the recruitment and the retention side of things. I mean, getting engagement and building that membership experience. And really, again, at the core of it, to me, is always value and the value proposition. And, that's what's going to drive that growth, whether it's perceived or received. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just, there's always something new. And this pandemic really threw a lot of us into trying to find new strategies or take a new look at things, and it's been great because it basically is some of those organizations that I've worked with and for is they're very averse to change. Yeah. And so when something like this happens, it's a wake up call, and they're like, let's change. We have to. It's like the meetings industry was forced to change. They had to go virtual if they were going to have any type of events. And so now they're very open to hybrid and online events. It's interesting to watch.
I think that one of the things that the pandemic has done is that it's led us to be much more personalized, even though we're doing it through Zoom. But we have been holding quarterly meetings with all of our leaders from all of our chapters. And I think that has had a tremendous impact. Hopefully we'll see it because renewals have been down, but hopefully by doing this, they're getting a better understanding of value and understanding and getting ideas from each other of how to do things. And I think that, again, when you were talking about ways in which to personalize, I think that reaching out to members on that personal level, hey, how are you doing? That alone is something that we're trying to encourage our leaders to do. Just have a virtual networking meeting to ask how everyone's doing, if for lack of any other subject. So hopefully that's going to be something that will work for us.
Yeah. Well, it's just even what you're saying, Cheryl, is what we're seeing here. I mean, it's just been fun to see my friends, Caroline and Monica and Kevin and Sarah and so many others who have joined us today. It's just a nice feeling to be able to reconnect with people and see people just what, like you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree.
And Daryl, don't forget Daryl.
Don't forget Daryl. But yeah, I agree, and it's just great to have that. And it's funny because those that weren't open to these type of experiences in the past are now more open. And I can say, hey, let's have an online meeting rather than a phone call, or it's easier to fit that into your schedule than an in-person that you have to drive over and have official meeting and then get back in the car and that type of thing. So I think we're in for some good stuff coming up in the future, and looking forward to the new benchmarking study too, Tony. I was really happy to be able to be a part of it this year, and again, everyone, if there's the link in the chat if you want to go check out the book. You can read some of it online also leading into it, but from what I've already read, I'm about 3/4 of the way through, and it's a good reminder of everything, and even the stuff in the book. If you go to Tony's blog as well, there's still a ton of information there that you can get. That's I'm sure he couldn't fit it all. So Tony, thanks again for joining us, and everyone. Next month we will be on for the 20th, April 20th, same time, third Tuesday of every month, 12:30. And thanks again for participating and joining us, and see you around. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Dan. Take care.
Yeah, hey, good to see you, Scott. See ya.